Hi there, Fatalis!
Hello, mortal. Time to wait. Why are you so happy?
Because I'm going to use your face as an arrow holder.
What the hell do you mean you're gonna use my face as a
Hello there, my fellow Fatalis-fearing hunters. How are you getting on? Yeah, that's about right. But if you manage to conquer he who stands above all, the Black Dragon, who is so very tall. Seriously, he's a lot bigger than he used to be. What awaits you is a selection of weapons that are beyond your wildest dreams. So before we get to, the weapons themselves specifically, as a general, let's talk how good they are. Firstly, if you are into raw, or if your build is focused on raw, or if all you care about is how hard the weapon hits, well then Fatalis is your new best weapon. The raw is obscene. To use Greatsword an example, it's 340, which makes Fatalis weapons the highest raw weapons in the game. They also have purple sharpness, though it is just a tiny slither of it, and they do have a hefty minus chunk of affinity, but both of those things are fixed by wearing 4-slot Fatalis, because that gives you a true razor sharp, making that purple go a lot further, and it also gives you the sheer slottage to combat that minus affinity, and then some. So yeah, raw users, meet your new weapons. Those of you that are more elementally persuaded, well, the dragon is kinda tiny, and is no upgrade over the current best dragon elemental builds. And then when it comes to your ranged weapons, or your hunting horns, or all of you that need other special quirks to align on your weapon, well, we'll get to them on a case-by-case basis. So welcome to your Fatalis weapon showcase. First up then, it's Sword and Shield.
Ooh, you suck.
And I kinda don't like that this has happened, because I really don't mind Sword and Shield. Donking down on a monster is always fun. But look, the sword itself looks more suited to kind of poking someone in the side and making them go, ooh, as it does slaying, a mighty monster. The shield itself is kind of pathetic, and I just don't get any, wrought from the scales of the mightiest monster vibes. I also can't really tell which part it even comes from, and that's always a nice thing to be able to tell when evaluating weapons, though I do like the little hiding eye in the hilt, like,
Hello, I came from a baby Fatalis and I'm a little bit scared.
So, yeah, there it is. Next at 13 is the light bowgun, because it just, well, to me is a worse version of the heavy bowgun that I like a lot more and that we'll get to. But I will admit I appreciate the sort of baby little dragon Fatalis that's got going on, the tiny wings and the tiny tail. And look, I'll be honest here, none of the Fatalis weapons are, bad, but of course there is the worst of the best, and for me the light bowgun falls very much in that category. What really kinda is the end, the kinda tiny 4-clawed prong with the shooting nub. It just looks a little bit off, and I can't really explain why. Then when it comes to your light bowgun ammo, it has a very interesting selection. All of the piercing, spread, and sticky, a tiny smattering of status, but it is all of the status, and that makes it quite good to do a very general jack-of-all-trades build with, which you do have space for combined with the Fatalis armor. So while this bow might not be the king of anything, though with the kind of raw that it has, it might be pretty good at the old sticky, but we will see. It certainly has a lot of options. Admittedly, I'm not the most up on ranged weapons, because me hit thing with big stick mainly, but I do think it certainly looks like a lot of fun. Then we have ourselves the lance, and although I appreciate the large thrusting horn, it's just a bit plain is the main thing. The big horn shield is very cool, but the actual lance itself just got a big, well, horn, ridged, spiky, stabby, scaly, but there's nothing really special going on here. None of the eyes, none of the intricacy that the other weapons share. It's just very, very basic. Then we have the switch axe, and this one kind of pains me because I love the switch axe, but I don't know, there's just something a little bit off about it. It looks like a shield for another weapon. In fact, it looks like the shield that the lance should have got stuck on the end of quite a bulky pole here. Yes, Fatalis Eye all up, of course, is a Fatalis weapon, and it is nice to see the eye glowing bright between the two sides. A little pool of infernal blaze there, but I just don't like how it's put together. I think it looks almost a bit awkward. Next up, a very different reason for being here is the jewel blades, and to me, firstly, tiny, stabby, pointy is okay, right? It literally is like one of his horns with a handle, nice all puncture wounds, get the blood flowing, I guess both in the poor victim and you enjoying the thrill of the hunt. But the other sword is why it's so high up for me, because it just looks like a mini version of the great sword. And spoiler alert, I love the great sword. I think it's really cool, like a Fatalis scimitar, that scything edge, the sheen of it. It's just a gnarly looking weapon that can so severely do a lot of damage, and for a jewel blade it is fairly chunky, and I can definitely appreciate that. I am a certified fan of this pair of death dealers. Then we have the heavy bowgun. This is as much of an obvious statement to say, just a bigger version of the light bowgun. I know, I really am making groundbreaking observations here, but if the light bowgun is a baby dragon, well, this one has been time wizard and now he is the full Fatalis head. At least almost. It still ends in the four-claw pronged shooter device contraption, also known as the barrel of the gun, and that kinda weirds me out, but I do like the four horns, the strings tying it back, the spikes representing a miniature version of Fatalis's back. It just really looks like a bowgun capable of spewing Fatalis's own flames, and I can really get behind that. So when it comes to the heavy bowgun's ammo, it's I mean, look at it. Like, it's basically all of them, and a lot of all of them. Randomly low paralysis, but everything else, it can fire it. And with that sheer raw that it's got to work with, you can make something special basically focused around any of the ammo types and have a lot of utility to boot. So yeah, solid. Then we have the charge blade. Now in Sword and Shield mode it's just fine, right? The blade itself is quite cool. The little hooked edge looks like it can do a lot of damage. I like how it's put together. You can see the file nestled in to the top there, and you can also on the shield see the almost mouth, the teeth, the maw overlapping in the middle like it's the side of Fatalis's face. And indeed, when you switch modes, you do see it open up to reveal the eye within. Like all along, he had an eyeball in his mouth, which isn't as a pleasant image now that I say it out loud, but it is just much better looking than I really thought it would be, because it's no secret I'm not a fan of the charge blade, but I am a fan of the aesthetic of this one. Then we have the meow. That sounded like a like an annoyed cat. It was supposed to be a strum. It's a Fatalis guitar, okay? It's a Fatalis. It's a guitar that looks like it's Fatalis's own instrument. It's a Fatalis guitar. His horns rounded, strung up, and it's a Fatalis guitar. I know I've said that a lot now, but I think this is one of those rare occasions where you don't need to do more in justifying your choice than literally just saying what it is, because it's a Fatalis guitar. So, on that note, I am going to move on from the Fatalis Fatalis Guitar, or at least I would if it wasn't time to show you the songs, which are really, really quite awesome. And I think it makes for a very solid, offensive, head-smashy, sound-makey hunting horn bro that can really get the job done and be the rare unicorn hero that we need them to be. Next up then, as we head towards the top 5, just missing out on that, is the Gun Lance. And I think the Gun Lance is just amazing. I mean, obviously it's 6 here on the list, it's kind of implied. And the reason I think that is because, one, the eye here is one of the better Fatalis weapon eyes. It's gorgeous, and I love the size of it. It's a big, throbbing eyeball. Either way, that's not the main focus here. The two horns curved out to a very satisfying shape and point, nestled in the middle of which is the barrel of the gun lance. But the barrel of this gun lance is shaped like a cannon, i.e. the cannons that you use in Castle Shrade to fight Fatalis. It's like a mini artistic representation of the fight. The cannon, surrounded by horns, evokes the feeling of the poor people of Shrade as they were surrounded, despite valiant efforts, by the might and flame of Fatalis or some shit like that. The point is, it's a very well thought out weapon. It looks very, very nasty to be on the wrong end of, and I can appreciate it. The only reason it's not squeaked into the top 5 is because I think the shield is kind of awful, really. I don't have much to say about that at all. Then we have 5th, the hammer. And as much as I am not a bigger fan of a head on a stick as Cotton is, this one is not just a head on a stick, it's a whole Fatalis on a stick. At least that's what I'm seeing. You see, the very handle that you're holding is the tail of Fatalis, and then it goes up, his body forced, contorted round into a bone-breaking circle, twist and twist and twist, and then that little, like, lump sticking off is what remains of his head, his horns getting caught up into it, and look, to me, it's just somebody who took a Fatalis and just rolled it up like a goddamn newspaper. And newsflash, that's pretty badass! Though, perhaps that isn't actually what the intended look here is. It's what I see, and therefore, it's goddamn awesome! Talking of awesome, this is the longsword. It's a kinda scythe, but with bone spikes sticking out, and it's just cool as fuck. Okay, if you're gonna make a longsword, you need to make a longsword that has every longsword player going, yes, this weapon is cool as fuck. I am cool as fuck. I'm a longsword player, so it's important that the weapon I'm using is as cool as I am as a longsword player. And this longsword is cool. Having those just sheer bone spikes rending outwards is badass. The arc of the scythe, I mean, it is a classic Fatalis weapon, and it is lovely to see it rendered in Iceborne. I think it is just fantastic. Impractical as all hell, but look, it has got 10 out of 10 for pure style points, and again, that's what matters to every longsword player, and you know I'm not wrong. Then, at number 3, Insect Glaive. Now, you might be thinking, it's alright, but it's a bit simple, right? And for the most part, it is. It's just a nice little curved spike on the end, but nothing too crazy. Except the Insect Glaive wins the award for Best Fatalis Eye within the weapon, because it is just the best Fatalis Eye. The others are orangey, but this one has got red to it. The overwhelming red tint. It looks like there's almost a crimson galaxy trapped inside. There's almost a sparkle to it. The defined slit of Fatalis's angry glare just seething away in the essence holder of the Insect Glaive, I think is just lovely. It's almost like he's just extra angry and bloodshot because a bug keeps depositing monster juice right in front of it, and I can very much get behind that form of post-mortem Fatalis torture. Then at number 2, it's my baby, it's Greatsword, and look at that fucking thing! It's just meaty, it is powerful, it is going to break monsters in half. Look, I have always been a fan when it comes to greatswords of just big monster bones sharpened. I think there is a definite charm to that, and this is the epitome of big monster bones sharpened, because it's a Fatalis one, and you don't get better than Fatalis. The curved edge, again, kind of like with the dual blade, but of course with a sword this big, it's certainly no scimitar, it's just hit the thing against the thing, and that'll probably hurt enough, blade irrelevant, but it's just a really nice form for a big sword to have. Even the hole gives it a nice little aesthetic, the handle wrapped in the red fabric is very, very nice. All of the little textures and ridges on it, it just looks like a fossilized Fatalis bone that someone has sharpened, and I adore it. But it's not one. It's not one, because one, as you may have guessed coming into this, is the bloody bow. It's just Fatalis' head with an extra pair of horns stuck on the bottom and then strung up. The arrows are fed through the back of his skull, out through his permanently open, silently screaming mouth before being launched at their target. This weapon is so random. Yes, the bowguns had a bit of a face motif and there's eyes here and there, but with bow, for some reason, it's just the entire Fatalis head. There's no, like, proper explanation why the bow gets this, but it does, and I can only think it is just purely for Fatalis torture. Forget insect juice chamber, it is just repeated giant metal spikes pushed through his skull, and Fatalises don't really die. They can grow back from a single scale. So in all possibility, this thing is constantly trying to regenerate and constantly being re-killed every time the archer fires an arrow. And you try and tell me that is not the best weapon design you've ever seen. It's also a really, really, really fun bow with all of the different shots it can use. Sadly, of course, it's not that great elemental-wise, but I will be using it for Dragon Piercer, so that's very exciting. Alright guys, that is your Fatalis weapon breakdown and rankings. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you had fun. Like if you did, and subscribe for more. A goodbye.
Rage Gaming with the video float.
But that's all that's really relevant at the mo, but I'm still gonna leave this up so you patrons know that I love you even though the outro's no longer that kind of relevant. But the new one's being worked on and it's gonna be a truly badass song, and don't worry, I won't be doing any rapping on it. I'm gonna go now. This was shit.